Have you ever looked around and suddenly nothing felt real? The walls looked familiar. The voices sounded normal. Your hands moved when you told them to. But something was wrong. Not outside, but underneath everything. Like the world was a movie, and you were watching it happen. From behind glass, from underwater, from somewhere not quite here. That's derealization. And once it begins, you can't explain it. You can't prove it. You can't stop it. Let's talk about the moment it starts. For many, it comes during stress, or panic, or exhaustion. You're overwhelmed, overstimulated, disoriented, and suddenly, your brain hits a switch. Not a breakdown, not a failure, but a defense mechanism. It's trying to protect you from sensory overload, from emotional pain, from psychological collapse. So it disconnects you, not from the world itself, but from your experience of it. Colors go flat. Sounds feel distant. Time loses shape. Faces become uncanny. You know you're alive. You just don't feel like you're in your life. Let's talk about what's happening in the brain. Studies show that derealization involves the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex, the logical part, becomes overactive, trying to make sense of danger. The limbic system, the emotional part, gets muted to numb the fear. The result? A cold, sterile awareness. No feeling, no presence, just observation. You're there, but not. Let's talk about what it feels like. Your reflection doesn't look like you. The voice you hear doesn't sound like yours. The day feels like a copy of yesterday. You speak, but the words feel automated. The world is behind glass, and you're pressing against it. And yet, your heart is beating. Your senses are online. Your body moves through space. But it's like dreaming while wide awake. Let's talk about fear. Derealization is terrifying, not because you're in danger, but because you don't trust your reality anymore. You ask, am I going crazy? What if this never ends? What if I'm already dead? What if I'm stuck in a dream I'll never wake from? You Google symptoms. You talk to doctors. You try to snap out of it. You pinch your skin, splash cold water, stare at lights. But nothing helps. Because this isn't about your senses. It's about your perception. Let's talk about isolation. No one can see what you're going through. There are no bruises, no scars, no medical test that says, yes, you're detached from reality. So people say, it's all in your head. Just relax. Get more sleep. You're fine. But you don't feel fine. You feel like a ghost in your own life. And that is a kind of pain few understand. Let's pause. You're not crazy. You're not broken. Your brain is protecting you. Too well. But that protection now feels like prison. You wake up, but something's missing. You walk, but the ground doesn't feel solid. You speak, but the words don't feel yours. You're alive, but not here. This isn't a dream. It's worse. Because you know it's real. You know this is your life. You know these are your hands, your room, your name, but none of it feels like it belongs to you. That's the prison of derealization. A cell without bars. A sentence without a judge. A silence no one else can hear. Let's talk about what chronic derealization looks like. For some people, it lasts days. For others, years. It becomes a constant fog, a film over the world, a muted existence. You stop trusting your own perception. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop believing your memories. You smile, but it's performative. You speak, but it's scripted. You function, go to work, eat, talk. But inside, you feel like a character in a simulation. Let's talk about depersonalization. Its twin. Often, derealization comes with depersonalization, a disconnection from yourself. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the eyes staring back. You wonder if you're real, if your thoughts are real, if you've always felt this way and just didn't notice. The mind folds in on itself. It starts questioning everything. Am I just a brain in a jar? Is this some kind of test? What if I'm not even alive? This isn't psychosis. You know it's irrational, but the feeling doesn't care. Let's talk about identity collapse. Over time, derealization erodes the foundation of who you are. If the world isn't real, if your body isn't real, then what's left? Your past feels distant. Your future feels impossible. The present feels theoretical. So you retreat. From people, from choices, from yourself. You begin to live in maintenance mode. Eat enough to not faint. Speak enough to not worry others. Smile enough to be left alone. But inside, it's quiet. Not peaceful. Just hollow. Let's talk about what this does to your relationships. You try to explain. But how do you explain the absence of presence? You say things like, "It feels like I'm not here. It feels like I'm watching life from outside my body. It's like everything is fake." And people don't understand. They think you're being dramatic, or spiritual, or lazy, or high. So you stop trying to explain. You isolate. You pretend, because pretending is easier than being disbelieved. Let's talk about coping mechanisms. Some turn to stimulants, others to meditation. Some seek thrill, trying to shock themselves back into feeling real. Others go numb, sleep 14 hours a day, scroll endlessly, avoid mirrors, avoid silence. Because silence lets the questions come back, and the questions hurt. Let's talk about the fear of permanence. Perhaps the worst part of derealization is the thought that it might never end. You ask, what if I'm like this forever? What if I never feel real again? What if this is my new normal? And that fear becomes another prison. Let's pause. You're not losing your mind. You're not alone. This experience, however, surreal, is shared by thousands, millions. And the very fact that you can describe it means you are still here, even if you can't feel it yet. You want to wake up, but you're not asleep. You want to come back, but you're not sure where back is anymore. That's what makes derealization so cruel. You're not lost in space. You're lost in your own sense of existence. And recovery doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It feels like learning to walk on legs that forgot what gravity is. But the path back exists. It's real. And you can find it. Let's talk about what healing actually looks like. It's not sudden. It's not dramatic. There's no switch to flip. Instead, it's quiet, incremental, built on consistency, not clarity. You start by anchoring, not to big ideas, but to small sensations. Your breath, the weight of your body in a chair, the sound of a clock, the feel of cold water on your hands. These are not tricks. They're bridges between dissociation and presence. Let's talk about neuroplasticity. The brain is not fixed. It rewires. It learns. When you've spent months or years in derealization, your brain has built neural highways for disconnection. Healing means building new paths, and that takes repetition. Grounding exercises, mindfulness, somatic practices, gentle exposure to emotion, routine, sleep, sunlight. You won't feel results overnight. But one day you'll notice a moment that felt more here than before, a color that looked brighter, a conversation you were actually in. And that moment is proof. You're coming back. Let's talk about why it's hard to trust healing. You've gotten used to floating, to doubting everything. Even hope feels suspicious. So when you start to feel better, you might panic. What if it's just temporary? What if I'm faking it? What if I fall back again? And maybe you will. But that's okay. Healing is nonlinear. You fall. You pause. You rebuild. The point isn't to feel perfect. It's to feel present even briefly. And then more often. And then longer. Let's talk about reclaiming identity. Derealization robs you of your self-story, your emotions, your sense of place in the world. Recovery is about relearning who you are. Start small. What are 3 things you love? What sensations bring you peace? What does safety feel like, physically? The answers may be slow, but they are coming from you. Not from fear, not from conditioning, not from survival mode. That is identity, even in fragments. Let's talk about connection. Isolation deepens dissociation, but connection genuine, patient, unforced, softens it. Speak with people who believe you, who don't rush you, who understand that healing is a process, not a performance. And if you can't find those people in real life, seek them in books, in forums, in stories. Because being seen, really seen, brings you back into the world. Let's talk about forgiveness. Not for others. For yourself. Forgive the version of you who numbed out, who lost time, who forgot joy, who disappeared into the fog. They weren't weak. They were protecting you. And they got you here. Let's close with this. Derealization is not the end of you. It's a detour, a coping mechanism, a signal that your mind has seen too much, felt too much, or stayed in survival too long. But now you're learning to return. Not in one leap, but in 1,000 gentle steps. The light feels too bright. The world feels too sharp. Your body feels too loud. But it's real. And more importantly, so are you.